Hey there guys, and welcome to Novel With Me, the series which takes you on a writing journey from start to finish. Today we're going to talk about how to plot a series. Yay! Last time we spoke, we talked about the 3 different ways to structure and plot a novel. Those are, I suppose, more for standalone novels than they are for series, although they could help you plot a series. That video is up there in the corner. There is a completely different method to structuring and plotting and organising an entire series than there is a standalone novel. Of course there is. Do these different structure methods have official names? I don't know. They probably do, and if they do have official names, please let me know down in the comments what they are. I'm just going to call them what I call them for now. Series is just that. It's a series of books, which is, I guess, more than one book in a series. You've got duologies, trilogies, quadrologies, whatever Harry Potter is, I don't know. And looking through all of these different series, I've sort of filed it down to 3 different types of series. You have anthologies, which is a series which has like setting or theme in common, maybe characters, usually not characters. Chronicles of Narnia is a good anthology. I know a few of those have similar characters, but the rest of the books in the series, they're all set in Narnia, or what will be Narnia. So they all follow their own different plot points, etc., etc. You have plot-driven series, which are series which doesn't have a character arc for the protagonist, where they are a static character, and each book is like their adventures. So things like Sherlock Holmes is a really good plot-driven series. Nancy Drew is another really good plot-driven one. The character doesn't change, they sort of like stay the same throughout, but they don't need to change in order to fulfill the plot of the novel. Are you going to drink this or not? And then you have the character-driven novels. This is where the series follows a character and the character arc spans the entire length of the series. These are more, I suppose, chosen one, tropey sort of series, like Harry Potter is a character-driven novel, Percy Jackson's a character-driven, where the character's development is just as, if not more important than the actual plot. Bet you didn't know that. I bet you did, you're all readers, so I don't know why I said that. For the purpose of this video, we're going to focus more on character-driven novels. For the purpose of this video, we're going to focus more on character-driven series, because they are the ones that require a little bit more planning than anthologies and plot-driven novels. Be warned, I'm going to include movies and TV shows as examples for some of these, because I don't read that much. There are tons of different ways you can do a series. I suppose there's no set way to doing them. There's just different versions, and you can set those up, plan those, as much as you like, as differently as you would like, do what works for you. You can have trilogies that have a series long arc, an overreaching arc or plot point, like the Percy Jackson series, where the end goal of the novels is to defeat Cronus and fulfill the prophecy. Or each book can have its own plot that has no effect on any other plot in the series, and each book presents a new set of challenges for the characters to face and forces the characters to grow. So Twilight would be a good example of that. There's no goal that they get in the first book that they have to complete in the 4th book. Is there 4 books? Is there 3 books? Movies have really thrown me. There's no, each novel has its own threat, its own challenge that Edward and Bella have to. Like I said, there are many different ways to structure a series. I'm going to say trilogy from now on, because that's what I'm writing, and it's just easier than saying series all the time. Trilogies also tend to be more of the common length I guess, of a series, although I have seen a massive rise in more than 4 books in a series. You've seen it with Percy Jackson, Sarah J Maas, and the Throne of Glass series obviously is more than 3 books. The Shadowhunter series, which I call the Shadowhunter series because I can never remember the actual name of the series, that has more than 3 books as well. So storytelling is getting longer and longer and longer. But these structures that I'm going to talk about can be applied to any length of series from 2 books to 12 books, like a series of unfortunate events, which is also a character-driven series, by the way. Feeding a child. So let's go over the 3 different types of trilogies, or the 3 different types of structure for a trilogy. There is probably more structures than the 3 I'm going to mention, but I feel like these 3 are like the most well known or the most used. Number 1, the multi-arc series. This is probably the most popular type of trilogy, where each book is its own separate arc. Each book has a beginning, a middle and end, and each book has its own sort of separate plot line wrapped up by the end. But there is an underlying plot point that spans the entire 3 books, which culminates in book 3, and then all of the plot points that you've scattered in throughout the first 2 books will all culminate into that one last book 3. These are the trickiest to do because you've got to plot the entire series, plot each of the novels that you're going to do, and you've got to make sure to place clues and hints of the main conflict throughout the rest of the series so everything makes sense at the end. This one takes the most work. Number 2, the 2-arc series. This isn't seen as often. I did have an example for this. I've got an example on the tip of my tongue, and I cannot remember for the life of me what it is, and it's really peeing me off. But a 2-arc series is where the first novel is a standalone novel. You can read that, and book 2 and 3 won't adhere to that plot at all. I want to say How to Train Your Dragon. Was that planned as a standalone movie? I'm talking about the movie. Was that planned as a standalone movie before they decided to make it into a trilogy? Maybe. I can't remember my example, but there's a standalone novel which is a completely different plot, and then books 2 and 3, or books 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, have an underlying overreaching plot arc that spans the entirety of those 2 books. So that is a 2-arc series. Number 3 is the 1-arc series. This is where you have one plot, and it's going to be a massively long plot, and you just cut it into however many books you need, and the one major plot of these books is this one plot point. So Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, that's sort of like one big giant plot, which is defeat Thanos, and they just cut it in half, I suppose, to form 2 different movies. Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, I guess, could also be a 1-arc series. Six of Crows ends on that stupid cliffhanger, stupidly wonderful cliffhanger, and the story continues straight on after that, so that could also be seen as a 1-arc series. But Sarah, you cry, how do you structure a novel? If you're doing a 1-arc series, then all you need to do is plot your entire series out as you want to plot it out, and then go through the plot and find natural stopping points for everything. My opinion, based on my experience reading books, when I read books, you want to find sort of natural endings. So you want to end on a cliffhanger. You want to end on the characters finding a new vital piece of information that sort of changes the game plan. You want to end on a scene that has an emotional impact for the character, something that's going to want to pull, something that's going to make the reader want to get the next book to find out what happens next. I mean, you're stopping in the middle of a story, so you need to find a place that's going to make them want to continue. If you're planning a 2-arc series, then you would plan your first novel as you would any other novel with any other novel structure that's done, and then stick that book to the side and taking none of the plot from that first novel, but obviously keeping whatever character development that the characters had. You could 1-arc structure plot books 2 and 3 plus, structuring it all and plotting it all and then splitting it where you need to split it, or you can do what I'm about to talk about. If you're doing a multi-arc series, each book needs to have its own separate plot with an underlying plot just waiting to be revealed. That gets a little more complicated because, like I said, you've technically then got 4 plots to sort of plot and structure and flesh out. You need to make sure that all of these plots can sort of stand alone while being able to link together with each other and the final overarching plot point. And you need to make them make sense. My advice in this case is to treat your trilogy like a 3-act novel. Book 1 is the beginning, book 2 is the middle, and book 3 is the end. Book 1 is going to be the introduction to the character, it's going to be the introduction to the setting, and it's going to be the introduction to the new world. At the end of book 1, something big is going to happen, something which changes the game, something which gives away hints at the bigger plot that there is. Book 2 is your character reacting to wherever the antagonist is throwing. Book 2 is reacting against this new situation, reacting against the antagonist as they make their play. This is where your character will have a new book goal to achieve. And then halfway through book 2, your characters will start being proactive. They'll start proactively working against the antagonist instead of just reacting to whatever the antagonist is throwing at them. And then at the end of that novel, something happens, something major, they lose. Book 3 is all about setting up for the climax. Your characters are gaining new information, they're pushing back against the antagonist, they're making their plans, which will all culminate in the final clash between antagonist and protagonist, and then everything is resolved. You can quite easily fit the overarching plot of a series into one of the 3 plot structures we mentioned last week. More specifically, K.M. Whalen's 3-act method. So the end of book 1 would be the end of act 1. The end of book 2 would be the end of act 2, and the end of book 3 would be, the end of act 3. That makes sense, doesn't it? Elements of book 2 should start to appear in book 1 around midpoint. Elements of book 3 should start appearing around midpoint in book 2. At least that's how I would play it. Start sprinkling it in early enough so all of the points make sense. Of course, that is me, that is what I would do. That is not what you should do. That's what I'm going to do, to make sure that I am putting in elements of each book into the previous books. Doing it this way means that you are planting seeds for the overarching plot, you're planting seeds for the next books within the first book. You just got to wait for them to sprout and take form. This creates threads of conflict and tension that are going to help pull your reader into the next book. In regard to the underlying story arc, each book should reference it or mention it or provide clues to it in some way, while your characters are also figuring out and sorting out the actual plot of that novel. Everything the character does and in every way the character grows is all set up for this big convergence of all of these plot points at the end of your final book. The underlying plot in Harry Potter is, of course, he needs to defeat Voldemort. The underlying plot in Percy Jackson is, of course, they need to fulfill the prophecy and defeat Cronus. All of the books in these series have their own self-contained arc. They have their own plot. They have their own beginning, middle and end. While the overarching plot, goes along in the background. I think of more examples, but I'm not a big reader, so you guys can figure it out. But all of these plots act as a setup for that final plot, which is the focus of your final book. With each novel, we figure out more clues, we get more hints to what this final plot is going to be, even if we, as the reader, can't quite piece them together just yet. The most important thing you need to remember when you're doing a series is to make sure your plot is tight, especially if you're doing a multi-arc plot, because everything has to make sense. Will you stop, kids? In the description box below is a Bristol Basics blog post which details everything I've spoken about in today's video, and a writing worksheet which provides hints and details on how to structure your series. Next week we're going to be going and talking about the themes of your novel. What are they? How do you find them? And are they important? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Good thoughts and happy writing.